Imagine you come to power. Thousands of people depend on your decisions. You could use that power to do good, but you don't. And yet you survive, you thrive, and you stay on top for years. The question is, why? The answer lies in a brutal principle. Bad behavior is almost always good politics. And when you understand this, you begin to see the world differently. Not as you wish, but as it actually works. In this first episode of the series based on the book, The Dictator's Handbook, we're going to debunk one of the most comforting illusions in politics. The idea that leaders do what they do because they're good or bad people. No. They do it because they understand the rules of power. Rules that work equally well in an African dictatorship, a Silicon Valley startup, or a small town in California. And to understand those rules, we have to look closely at the incentives. Because in the end, power isn't about morality, it's about survival. Let's talk about Bell. It's not a city in Iraq or Sudan, it's a working-class city in the heart of California, USA. In Bell, the city manager, Robert Rizzo, earned over $787,000 a year, more than the President of the United States. In a city where the average income barely surpassed $20,000. He didn't steal money. Everything was legal. He was clever, because he understood how to manipulate the system's rules. How did he do it? First, he reduced the number of people he needed to win elections to a minimum. He manipulated procedures, turned Bell into a charter city, and held a special election with barely any public participation. Only a few dozen people voted. Then, he rewarded the few council members who had to keep him in office. He paid them exaggerated salaries. Over $100,000 a year. He excluded one of them. That's the one who ended up blowing the whistle. Rizzo wasn't a monster, he was an applied student of the rules of power. You could say kind of a municipal version of the great dictators of the 20th century. His story tells us something, well, pretty uncomfortable. Corruption doesn't always need violence, it just needs a system that allows it. Another illustrative example comes from Equatorial Guinea, a small African country rich in oil. Its president, Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, has ruled since 1979. For decades, he has received billions of dollars in oil revenue. Yet the vast majority of the population lives in extreme poverty. So, how does he stay in power? Obiang uses the country's wealth to reward a small group of allies, family members, military chiefs, and loyal businessmen. He builds mansions, buys luxury cars, and takes lavish trips, while hospitals lack basic supplies and schools are in ruins. State income isn't used for the common good. It's used to maintain the loyalty of a small and powerful circle. And honestly, this is exactly what the Dictator's Handbook predicts. If your survival depends on just a handful of people, the rational thing is to reward them, not the people. Obiang is no exception. He is the norm in systems where the rules reward concentrated power. Bell and Equatorial Guinea are thousands of kilometers apart, but they follow the same logic. The book lays out a key idea. All leaders rule with the support of an essential group. It doesn't matter if you're a president, dictator, CEO, or tribal chief. That group is structured in 3 levels. First, interchangeables, the general population that could potentially vote, support, or legitimize the leader. Second, influentials, those who can actually participate in electing or deciding on a leader, voters, assemblies, the military. And third, essentials, the core group, without which the leader cannot stay in power. They're true allies. The smaller the essential group, the more stable a dictator can be. After all, it's a lot cheaper to keep 5 people loyal than 5 million. There are, honestly, many examples. In North Korea, the essential group might be limited to a dozen generals and family members. In a parliamentary democracy, the prime minister depends on the support of hundreds of thousands or even millions. What's fascinating is that this structure changes little across sectors. In the business world, something similar happens. A CEO who answers to a small board of directors will have more freedom than one watched by thousands of active shareholders. Let's look at a couple of examples. In Russia, Vladimir Putin has held power since 2000. Though elections are held, real power is concentrated in a small circle of oligarchs, security agents, and loyal officials. Ordinary citizens, the large interchangeable group, have little real influence. The key to Putin's regime lies in keeping the influential actors satisfied, controlling media, repressing opposition, and guaranteeing economic benefits to his essential circle. Every move he makes is designed to uphold this pyramid structure of support. Another interesting case is the Vatican. Though a religious institution, it also functions as a state with its own internal logic of power. When a pope is elected, it's by a group of influentials, the cardinals. But once in office, he must maintain harmony with a network of essential actors, including leaders of religious congregations, diplomats, and administrators of the Vatican Bank, who are key to implementing any reform. Pope Francis, for example, has had to balance his reformist message with the internal resistance of very influential conservative sectors within the church. These cases show how the theory of the three circles of power applies far beyond classic democracies or dictatorships. It's a universal logic of political and organizational leadership. Here's where everything makes sense. If your priority is to stay in office, then your incentives align with those who can remove you from office. Not with the people, not with ideals. If you only depend on 10 people to stay in power, the rational thing is to keep them happy. Even if the public suffers, even if the country falls apart, even if you have to silence, lie, or repress. This explains why so many dictators allow hunger, destroy education systems, or grow obscenely rich. It's not that they don't see the suffering, it's that the suffering of the masses doesn't affect their survival, and it also explains why so many democratic leaders end up betraying their promises. Once they gain power, they must balance the demands of the public with those of their essential group donors, parties, media, economic powers. When the system rewards loyalty over merit, bad behavior becomes strategy. Not because people are evil, but because it works. Take Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Though the country has endured a prolonged humanitarian crisis, with hyperinflation, food shortages, and mass migration, his regime has stayed in power for over a decade. How? Through a power machine built on strategic loyalty. Maduro ensures the military is well cared for by giving them preferential access to foreign currency, state contracts, and control over key sectors like food distribution. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens outside the essential group barely survive. The regime's priority isn't the public's well-being, it's keeping those who can protect or topple the leader loyal. Another striking case is Hun Sen in Cambodia, one of the world's longest ruling leaders. Since the 1980s, he's stayed in power through repression, co-opting opponents, and a carefully maintained patronage network. International aid and tourism revenue are distributed among the regime's political and economic allies. Elections exist but are controlled. Dissenting voices are silenced or absorbed through incentives. Hun Sen has built a system where corruption and censorship aren't bugs, they're features for retaining power. These examples show that the problem isn't a lack of personal ethics, but incentives that make cynicism more profitable than principles. Does this mean all leaders are cynical? Not necessarily. Many come to power with ideals, with genuine desires to improve their societies, fight injustice, or represent the voice of the people. But the system they enter does not reward those ideals. It rewards one thing above all, the ability to hold on to power. And in politics, holding power often requires prioritizing the needs of the essential group, those whose continued support is indispensable, over the broader public interest. It doesn't matter if a leader begins with noble intentions. Once in office, they are forced to make choices, reward their allies or risk losing their position. This doesn't make them evil. It makes them human, responding rationally to a set of perverse incentives. Let's look at this through a familiar lens. Imagine a mayor elected with the support of a few key business interests. She wants to improve education and healthcare, but the companies that funded her campaign expect favorable zoning laws and city contracts. If she refuses, they'll back her rival in the next election. If she complies, the public suffers. But she stays in office. The wrong decision becomes the smart one. Now scale that up to national politics. Presidents, prime ministers, and dictators alike face similar dilemmas. They must feed the machine that sustains their rule. For some, that means patronage networks, military loyalty, or ideological allies. For others, it means lobbyists, media conglomerates, and political financiers. The result is often the same. Public welfare becomes secondary to political survival. And that leads to a world where corruption, repression, and manipulation are not signs of failure. They are features of the system. But what can be done? The authors of The Dictator's Handbook argue that instead of relying on personal virtue, we should focus on systemic reforms. We must make doing the right thing align with staying in power. That starts with increasing transparency, so citizens know who influences decisions. It means expanding the essential group, so power is shared more broadly, not concentrated in the hands of a few. It also involves creating real checks and balances, independent institutions, free media, and civic participation that can hold leaders accountable. Ultimately, morality in politics is not a matter of personality, it's a matter of structure. If we want moral outcomes, we must build a system that rewards moral choices. This doesn't mean abandoning hope. On the contrary, it means shifting our focus from saviors to systems, from waiting for better leaders to creating better rules. Because in the end, no one is immune to the pull of power. But all of us together can rewrite the script. This is not a cynical book, it's a mirror. One that reflects why we keep repeating the same mistakes as a society. The problem isn't the people. The problem is the rules that reward them for doing wrong. And if we don't understand those rules, we will be their victims. Again and again. Let's look at two concrete cases. In Malaysia, former Prime Minister Najib Razak was at the center of one of the world's biggest corruption scandals, the 1MDB case. Over $4 billion was diverted from the National Sovereign Fund. How did he stay in power for so long? Because he used part of those funds to finance campaigns, bribe political allies, and ensure that key institutions, like the Judiciary or Attorney General's office, wouldn't act against him. Corruption became systemic, but every piece was well-greased. Everyone who mattered got something. Another example is found in Peru with the case of Alberto Fujimori. In the 1990s, his advisor Vladimiro Montesinos recorded politicians, businessmen, and media executives accepting bribes in exchange for political and media support. While the population was distracted by a narrative of order and progress, true power was bought and sold behind the scenes. Fujimori stayed in power for a decade because he had perfected the art of rewarding his essential group while keeping the rest of the population controlled or deceived. In the next episode, we'll talk about how power is acquired and how one survives once in it. We'll explore why revolutions often end in new tyrannies. But for now, the question remains for you. If your survival depended on just 10 people, would you really think about the common good? If you found this content valuable, consider subscribing, leaving your thoughts in the comments, and sharing it. This is the Power Book of Podcasts. See you next time.